Is your job search stuck? Maybe you're not getting any interviews with employers. Or maybe you are, but no job offers. Or you may be new and not even know where to start. This is Charles Max Wood, and I'm releasing a new course and ebook on how to find a job as a software developer. The course walks you through the process of finding the types of companies you want to work for, getting their attention, and putting your best foot forward as the candidate they want. I've coached dozens of developers in looking for jobs and have been able to help several people find jobs within 2 weeks to 2 months. So whether you're new to development, can't find a great job that fits what you want, or are looking for remote work from an area without a strong tech community, I can help. Go to getacoderjob.com and sign up today. Hey everybody, and welcome to another My Angular Story. This week we're talking to Georgi Parlakov. Georgi, you want to say hi?
Hey everyone, excited to be here.
Now, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
All right, so my name is Georgi Parlakov. I'm from Bulgaria. I've been an Angular 2 developer since Angular 2.0, like 2.5 years ago, and I'm loving it every step of the way.
Awesome. Now, it's interesting. We've had a number of people on the show, and I started out doing the show talking to past guests of Adventures in Angular, and lately I've been interviewing people who listen to the show, and I find that about half the people that I'm talking to that listen to the show are in the US, and the other half are not. And people's backgrounds in some ways are very similar no matter where they come from, and in other ways are very different. And so I'm a little curious as we get into this, to just kind of capture your experience getting into Angular, but also what it's like being a developer in your part of the world, some of the things that maybe folks here in the United States don't encounter or aren't aware of. So if you can just kind of call those out as we talk, that would be great.
All right.
First of all, I just want to dive in. How did you get into programming?
So I had a couple of classes in high school and then maybe first year in university, and I found it really interesting. But then I decided that I don't want to be sitting all day beside a desk, and I started pursuing a different kind of career, which basically ended up doing just the same. I was sitting all day, but in a car. So and also I had a couple of friends that were in the software industry, still are, and I was kind of jealous for their higher standard. And I'd like to say that in this part of the world, in Bulgaria specifically, the people in the software industry, they have kind of a double or triple even higher standard than the rest of the general population.
When you say standard, you're talking about standard of living. They get paid more. They live in nicer houses, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean exactly. So I was kind of jealous of that, and I really started to begin to try to get into software engineering. And I decided that having little to no technical expertise, I want to start with QAing. But I went to a couple of interviews, and I saw that really technically I'm missing a lot of. I need a lot of knowledge to gain. Right. And at that point, I learned about something that the Telerik company is doing, the Telerik Academy, and it was.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal down here. Telerik is. I think you've heard of it, the Kendo UI guys.
Yeah, they. So Telerik was acquired by a company called Progress, and both when it was Telerik and when it was Progress, they have sponsored the podcasts.
Yeah, so you know them, and they are.
I've talked to people in Bulgaria and in the US that work for them. So
yeah. So they're kind of a big deal here, and they had this maybe the first of this kind of a large academy. We started at around 1,300 students that year, and so I learned about that, and it was free, and I jumped to this occasion and to this opportunity because it seemed like something magic. Someone is going to teach me how to be a developer, and they will not charge me for that. I couldn't believe it. So down the line, I really got interested. It was very, it was fun for me. It was challenging. It was rewarding. It was all those things. So I dropped the QA gig and decided to go all the way. with being developer, and have not looked back ever since. I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Awesome. So how long is the program at Telerik Academy?
Well, that's about a year, and the last third, it's full time. The rest of it, the first maybe 6 months, you can do it evenings, and then you need to go full time. And that's when I quit my previous job, and that was a rough time for me, but it was very, very, very much worth it.
Nice. And what do they teach you there? Is it JavaScript or is it something else?
Yeah, including JavaScript. They were maybe putting more of they were teaching more of a .NET, the ASP.NET with web forms and MVC and all that stuff. And JavaScript was, kind of mentioned. I'm talking about 2011, and JavaScript was still, kind of picking up back then. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense because Kendo UI is a toolkit that I'm familiar with JavaScript, but they also have widgets for .NET.
Yeah. They also have for the desktop and for the web and
and mobile.
Yeah, that too.
So you get in, you're learning how to program at Telerik Academy. What got you into JavaScript? Did you?
Well, yeah, that's the previous job that I took. One of the reasons that I liked it was because of Angular, and that's maybe 2.5 years ago. At that time, I was doing mainly MVC, the ASP.NET MVC, which is a server-side rendered, HTML. And we were using some some jQuery, some Knockout, and I was learning about Angular, and I was interested about that. And the job having been Angular job, and also it was kind of technically interesting. They were talking about 3D rendering in the browser. Well, that's what I got from the conversation, but it was kind of a different. The rendering was done server side, and then just visualized doing on the browser doing Angular. But yeah.
Interesting.
Basically that's doing the job. We were a couple of new hires that started this project in Angular, and we were learning from each other and from I was really inspired by people like you and from the Angular team that were doing talks, presentations on different NG conferences. So I got a lot of those, a lot of knowledge out of those talks, and I was really inspired.
Nice. So you get into JavaScript, you get into Angular. Were you still doing some ASP.NET?
Yeah, we were. No, we were using basically web API for the backend.
Okay,
that's the RESTful framework for the ASP.NET stuff.
Yeah, I love how Microsoft names stuff. It's like, here's what it does. We're going to name it that.
Yeah, I'm listening to .NET Rocks, and they keep repeating that if you have a cool project alias, then the project name after that becomes like really WCF or WPF or something long and tedious.
Yep. Yeah, I love those guys. I spent a couple of days with Richard Campbell from .NET Rocks a few weeks ago. So
yeah, now I'm envious. Yeah, I'm listening to them. Basically, someone recommended them, and they were kind of one of the first podcasts that I started listening to, and they put the bar really high with their quality and with their they're having fun and they're teaching stuff, and it's really wonderful.
Yeah, well, Richard owns Carl owns a production company, so they kind of get what they want from that. But yeah, they do a terrific job, and they're terrific people. I love going and hanging out with them. So
yeah,
very cool. So what was it about Angular that got you excited? Was it just some of the things you were doing at work, or were there particular aspects of it that you were like, man, this makes it really nice to use?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the backend stuff, and I think a lot of people getting into Angular, especially Angular 2, find that it's kind of similar to, well, for me, kind of similar to MVC,
Mm-hmm.
the .NET MVC. I got a lot of the documentation. I think it's really good written documentation. It's at that time my daughter was 6 months old, and I was reading to her instead of bedtime stories the Angular documentation. Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed learning experience because basically I didn't have kind of a mentor or someone that was doing stuff with Angular
Right.
already. And also Angular was brand new at that point. I think
Mm-hmm.
the day that Angular turned 2.0 final is the day that we started, or it was really close.
Oh, right.
So yeah, the whole learning experience and the whole this is the problem, this is the issue, go find a solution. We want to use Angular, and the freedom, especially looking at that in retrospective,
Mm-hmm.
the freedom that I got was really fun for me, really challenging, and also yeah, it was very good.
Awesome. And I know that the Angular team likes hearing, that the experience is good and it's solving problems. So, yeah. I want to back up just for a minute. I like to ask this. How did you get your first programming job?
Well, it was basically out of the academy, maybe less than 2 months after that. Well, I think the most normal way that you do, just interviews, CVs, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess the people kind of believed in me, and I'm grateful for that, because at that point I must have been like 28 or something.
Uh-huh.
And it's not like the normal student type person to start a junior position somewhere. So
Right. Well, I got my first full-time programming job at 27,
there you
26.
go.
But I had a computer engineering degree, so it did make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people are transitioning. I did an interview on my JavaScript story with, I'm trying to remember her name, Tina. You can go look it up. I'll put a link in the show notes. But anyway, she's from South Africa, and she had moved from South Africa to England as part of immigrating to the United States because her husband got a job here. She has a Ph.D. in physics, and she's in her early 50s, maybe?
All right.
Transition right into programming and was working full time as a programmer. And so I think a lot of people think, oh, I missed the boat because I didn't get a computer science degree, or I missed the boat because I'm old, right? I'm 35. Oh dear, right? And it turns out it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, thanks for saying that. I really appreciate that. A lot of people, they are complaining. They want to change stuff, but they don't want to change stuff. They want to sit on their and they want to sit where they are and don't do anything, but they still complain. And I want to say to everyone listening, you can do it. It's not impossible. It's far from it. A lot of people do it, and as you say, 50 years old. I think there was at least one other student in our class that was a senior, maybe more than 50 years old, and it's doable. And also something else I heard online, someone, I can't really recall who, the coding knowledge will give you a lot of freedom in the coming years and century and years to come, because that's going to be kind of doing magic. A lot of the stuff that we get now, a lot of the technologies, they are they can be coded, they can be changed via coding. So anyone should learn to code, even as a as a hobby, as a something aside from the main from their main job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to become more and more of a life skill, where the world we interact with is partially physical and partially programmable, I guess is the best way to say it. And that might be things like IoT, it might be things like AI, and it might be things that are just, how we interact on our devices. But yeah, I completely agree. I think it's going to be a life skill that more and more people are going to need in order to do what we kind of consider to be mundane jobs at this point.
Yeah, I think I get asked by some people, well, if AI comes and with the advent of AI, my job is AI could take my job basically. And I say, yeah, that's true, but AI will also need jobs. AI will also create a lot of jobs. So
yeah. I hear some people theorizing that eventually, AI will put enough people out of work to where we're going to be talking about how to feed them and clothe them without them having to, being able to work in any meaningful capacity. And every time that society advances in technology, it creates new jobs as it eliminates jobs. Now, is it possible that they're correct and that it'll eliminate more jobs than it creates? Yeah, that's possible. But it'll be interesting to see exactly where we wind up with this stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of people derive a lot of value from what they do. And so I worry a little bit about the psychology of telling people, essentially, you're useless, here's money, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of us, maybe all of us, derive value from what we do.
Right.
And we are basically, we are getting all our, how can I say? Well, our self-respect and what we think of ourselves because of what we actually accomplish in the job.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we spent most of us 8 hours with these people and these problems. So it's important. And also it's good to basically like and even love what you do. So
yeah,
absolutely.
So what have you done with Angular that you're proud of?
Basically starting from scratch and learning the basics and then maybe some more advanced topics. But yeah, this is kind of thing that I consider as a achievement. And also lately I've been able to go to some local meetups, the Angular Sofia meetup, and I also was able to do a presentation there on a theme that I call NG Gotchas. Basically, the stuff that we were, that's the stuff that we were surprised with, sometimes nastily surprised with by Angular.
Right.
That's coming from for me, from my background, MVC on the server side. Some stuff on the Angular side is not really, how can I say, some stuff that I didn't expect to work as it did. It surprised me nastily. So I have this NG Gotchas Medium articles series, and I did a presentation on that. And also something that I'm really proud of is I wanted to contribute back to Angular. And since I work and my laptop at home is a PC, a Windows PC, I had some issues with CRLF, with the carriage return line feed.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, basically Git and Visual Studio Code, they were both trying to take out LF and then, on my machine, substitute that with CRLF. And, I was fighting with that for a while. But then I decided, because I was also interested in Docker, I decided to try and Dockerize Angular contribution. And basically, I succeeded in maybe a week or so time. And I have an article about that too, how you can actually, spin up a container, do your Angular contributions there, do your tests, and then, be certain that you can actually contribute safely back. And right. I actually got my first contribution. It was really a small one, but I'm really proud of that.
Woo! Yeah. Angular contributor.
Yeah.
Did that at the start of the show. Yeah. Georgi, Angular contributor.
Yeah. Really, really small contribution, but I'm really proud of the way that things turned out. I mean, I'm not really a Docker person. I was more of a I was really interested in that, and I wanted to see how can I use it. And also I'm not really an Angular experienced Angular developer or Angular contributor, but basically still I managed to put those things together and solve this well, maybe little issue for someone, but for me it was interesting and challenging and fun.
Well, and I want to call this out too, because, you've made this contribution, you contributed to Angular. You figured out how to Dockerize some of this stuff and solve some of the issues you had. And a lot of people, they look at open source and they go, there's no way I can contribute because I'm not an experienced Angular dev. I mean, all of the things that you said, I'm not this, I can't this, I didn't that. And, but I made this contribution anyway. And I think that's just as important as hey, look, if you're 90 and you want a job in code, go for it, right? The other thing is you don't have to be an expert to solve a problem. Even little problems that we run into. And if enough inexperienced people solve enough little problems, then the rest of us don't have to deal with them. Amen. And so if you can find something that you think you can contribute, do it. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a genius. I mean, you might be, you might be a genius. I don't know. We've talked for 20 minutes, but you don't have to be, right? You can just be a regular person that loves Angular and wants to fix a problem.
Yeah. We got a lot of Angular at my place of work. I personally got a lot of Angular and from the Angular team, and I wanted to give back some, and also make maybe a name for myself. So yeah, it was really fun and challenging, and also really nice to actually do it.
Yep. Well, and that doesn't hurt either, right? Because now you can put on your resume or CV Angular contributor.
Oh yeah. I was looking into the contributors earlier today for Angular, but GitHub only shows the first 100, so I'm not in there.
Keep working on it. I'm just kidding.
Well.
But yeah, it's important. I mean, every little piece helps. And, it's a good way to get involved. It's a good way to meet people. I mean, there are so many benefits to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So what are you working on now?
Now, aside from the job, which is, not Angular. Currently, the project that I started recently is not Angular. But aside from that, I'm doing a video course on functional C#, and I hope it gets published. Basically, it's still work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
is that for any company in particular? Where are you planning on publishing that?
No, that's for Pact Publishing. They approached me, and we started this project. Hopefully, we can finish that.
Nice. Is there a place people can find that, or pre-order it, or anything like that?
Well, not to my knowledge. It's still kind of maybe 50% done.
Okay.
Or even less, because still not done.
Yeah, I know how that goes. I'm still working on my course on how to find a job. So, yeah, I hear that. So I want to talk a little bit about the community out in Bulgaria. So what's it like being a developer out in Bulgaria?
Well, I mentioned that, the higher living standard is something that's very particular for this industry, for the software industry. A lot of really big enterprises have offices down here, like SAP, like VMware, like players of this.
Oh wow!
And a lot of us work in jobs that basically, places that basically outsource people to work for enterprises in Europe and in the US, in the UK. So basically, we are kind of a small India with a lot of developers working for overseas projects and companies.
Nice.
And also, there's Telerik and a few other companies that have their own product and also support that. Like recently, I learned that there's this company called Chaos Group, and they're kind of big on the 3D rendering stuff, and they're also local here.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, do most people in Bulgaria speak English? Because most of the development documentation that I've seen out there is in English. And so I wonder if that's a barrier for people to get into programming.
Well, most of the young people do, especially, with the advent of personal computers and, phones, everything is in English. But, the majority of the population, no. I would say no, English is not there. It's not a kind of a second language here.
So does that make it hard for people to make the transition, or is there enough information out there in Bulgarian for people to figure it out?
I'd say it makes it harder, but people like the Telerik Academy tutors, they make things a lot easier because they basically, teach in Bulgarian.
That makes sense. I found that, the way that you're describing things is pretty close to my experience. I lived in Italy for 2 years, about 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, so I would go talk to people. And yeah, I mean, most of the time we were talking to people in Italian, but a lot of the younger folks spoke English. And last year we actually had a foreign exchange student from Italy in our house. And she was telling us that most students now are learning English in high school. And so they at least speak a little bit. And I'm thinking that probably helps some of them be able to find, international jobs or learn skills where the primary documentation is going to be in English.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we usually work with people overseas or foreigners, and English is kind of the language that we use. My previous job, we were doing with a company out of Amsterdam, and English is kind of the second language there. But we had people from France, from Germany, from you name it. It was kind of a very colorful team. And English is the language of, that everyone speaks.
Yeah, it's also been interesting just from the standpoint of, I've talked to a few people who work in like Germany and other countries. And yeah, they have a multinational team that's in Germany. And so they, when they're out and about in Germany, they are speaking German. And when they go to work, they speak English because everybody else speaks English.
Yeah. And you don't want to keep people out. It's kind of rude to speak Bulgarian while in meeting or other people that don't speak Bulgarian.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, if your whole team is in Bulgaria, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect people to speak Bulgarian. But you have to figure out what works for your team. So
yeah, definitely. Well, we were kind of half and half. Half the team, especially the development part, that was out here in Bulgaria. And when we did meetings, only this part of the team, of course, we spoke Bulgarian. And it's really nice when you are co-located, because issues are that much easier to discuss and resolve.
Yep, that makes sense. One other question I have for you about the Bulgarian programming scene is, so are you located in Sofia or?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm assuming there's a reasonably strong programming community there. As you get outside of the city, is there much less of a programming community?
Yeah,
definitely. Harder to find jobs and stuff out there?
Yeah, definitely. So there are maybe 2 or 3 other major cities, Varna, Burgas, Plovdiv, that have a lot of programming jobs. And then the rest of the country is basically zero or close to zero. But still that changes. Again, I'll mention people that spun off from the Telerik Academy, Soft to Uni. They're doing free courses for the school students, again for programming, and they take anyone that wants to from that part of the country and that needs. That can teach something, and they basically help them to start the spark, maybe I should say, in the younger students, in the kids.
Makes sense. Yeah, I've been a little curious here. So I live in Utah. If you don't know where it is, we're between Nevada and Wyoming, Colorado, for people that aren't familiar with U.S. geography. And if that doesn't help you, I guess you can go look it up on Google Maps or something. Yeah. But anyway, so there's an area called the Wasatch Front, which is basically a ways north of Salt Lake City, all the way down to Provo in Utah. There's a very healthy tech scene. And then like my my wife is from a little town in eastern Utah, and there's nothing out there. If you want a tech job out there, good luck. And it's because they're small towns, mining or farming. And yeah, I've wondered a little bit, if there would be some way of opening things up out there to bring in more communities. And it sounds like that's kind of a problem everywhere once you get a ways away from a large tech center.
Yeah. And to be, well, I'm guessing here that a lot of the young people would like to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And what they need to do basically is come out here, or to the closest one of those big cities. And I think that's not unusual anywhere. I'm hearing some of the people going back, after they've established themselves as professionals, then going.
Mm-hmm.
Especially now, you can actually work remotely, and that's also an option.
Yep. Yeah, that's been my experience as well, that a lot of people are willing to do that, where essentially they pick up the skills, they get enough experience to where they can get hired to work remotely, and then they do that.
All right.
Well, one last thing that I want to ask is, if people want to find you online, where are you? Do you have like a Medium or?
Yeah, exactly. I blog on Medium. It's G Parlakov, one word. I guess we can put that kind of in the notes.
Yep, we'll put it in the notes.
And also I'm recently, maybe for a year now, on Twitter, and I'm tweeting not really often, but about the stuff that I find interesting. And I follow a lot of people interesting from the .NET Core team, from the Angular team, people that Elon Musk,
mm-hmm.
People that I find inspiring.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Do you want to put those links in the chat, and we'll make sure those wind up in the show notes?
Sure, will do.
All right. Well, the last section of this show is picks. Do you have some things you want to shout out about on the show?
Well, yeah, actually I do. And I've prepared a list.
Awesome.
So first thing I want to say to everyone that's listening, and find your thing and do the leap of faith. That's it's never too late. And yeah, that's kind of the idea that I want to convey. And also a couple of tech stuff. I want to shout out about StackBlitz. If you've not heard about it, it's kind of a Angular in the browser. It's great stuff. I've used it for a couple of my blogs, and it's really, really convenient because you can do everything online, and then even download the project on your local machine, or vice versa. You can start in GitHub and then go to StackBlitz. And I want to say that I've been listening to a book by a Chinese author, The Three-Body Problem, an audio book version of that.
I've been wanting to read that. Is it good?
Yeah, it blew my mind. It's great. For the first maybe an hour, he talks about the Chinese Cultural Revolution, stuff that happened back in the 60s, in the 70s. But that lays just the foundation, and then it picks up from there. And the book is really amazing. And there are 3 books, and there are more than 60 hours total in audio content. And as I said, it blew my mind a couple of times. I really recommend that.
Nice. I'll have to check it out. I think it's on my wish list for Audible. So yeah, I listen to a ton of stuff on audible.com. I guess I'll shout that out first. Yeah, I probably listen to, on average, about a book a week.
All right.
And, some of it's fiction and some of it's not. Probably about half of it. And I've really, really enjoyed that. The book I'm listening to right now is The Diabetes Code by Dr. Jason Fung. So I have type 2 diabetes. I've mostly been, I've been diabetic for 12 years. And I never felt like it was completely under control. Like, even when my numbers were what the doctor said it was, I just never felt 100% good. And so I started doing the ketogenic diet.
All right.
We talked about .NET Rocks. Carl Franklin from .NET Rocks, he and another guy named Richard Morris, which is funny because it's Carl and Richard on this show too. They do 2 keto dudes, and they talk about the ketogenic diet. And that has helped me. That makes me feel better than anything else that has, with my health and everything else. So I've been doing the ketogenic diet, and Dr. Jason Fung, he kind of explains the mechanisms that cause diabetes. and then kind of walks you through how to approach the ketogenic diet to keep that under control. So I've really, really enjoyed it. And then I took a course on writing a book, and that, so I've been working on the How to Get a Job book and course. By the time this goes live, you're probably going to have a pretty good run at the book. We'll probably be past the rough draft, and I'll have massaged it into a more cohesive thing. Though I have had a couple of calls with people who have bought the book and read it, what I have so far, and it's changed the way that they're doing their job search, and they're happier with the results they're getting as far as interviews and things. So I'll just put that out there. But anyway, one of the things that they have you do as part of this course is get an accountability partner. And he recommended a book to me called Ultramarathon Man. It's by Dean Karnazes. And the guy is insane. But, he talks about running 100 miles at a time or 200 miles at a time.
Wow.
Over like 2 days without sleeping. But it was really, really just a fascinating book, and made me realize that, for me, in a lot of ways, what running gives him, coding does for me, as far as just, the thing that gets me going, gets me excited. And so I love that. And it also inspired me to get out and run. So I decided that it sounded crazy, but that was okay. And that was I basically every weekday for Thursday and Friday last week, and, I'm going to do it all basically through the rest of October, is I'm going to walk or run a 5K every day.
All right. Good for you.
And so, I just, it's been kind of cold here. It's starting to get cold because it's October in the US. So I've just been going to the gym and doing it on the treadmill. But yeah, 3.1 miles. And anyway, I've really been digging that. So I'm going to pick that as well. Ultramarathon Man by Dean Karnazes.
Yeah, it's always good when you kind of get a move on.
Yep.
It's always good when you do something that's challenging physically.
Yep, absolutely. And also just, to your point, if you're reading a book, the 3-body problem, hopefully that's inspiring you to change things in your life to make things better. And that's the reason why I read some of the books that I read. So some of them are business, and it's, hey, let's do a little bit better with the podcast network. And some of it's, health, like the diabetes code or the running book, and sometimes it's other stuff. So
yeah, I got reminded, I was listening to Getting to Yes, a wonderful audiobook. I listened to it twice. It's kind of a negotiating strategy book, and also I'd like to say personal development kind of thing. It's really good. It's kind of eye opener for me. It was an eye opener, definitely.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming and talking to us about your journey into Angular.
Yeah, I was very excited to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, it's fun, and it's always great to just hear, hey, here's another take. That's somebody like me, and if he can do it, maybe I have a shot. And I love putting that out there and having people go, oh yeah, I identify with that. So
yeah.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this one up. Thank you for coming.
Sure.
And we will catch everyone next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.